Everybody, and welcome to the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast, episode 117. My name is Bret, aka Enigma9011, and you can catch this podcast live over on twitch.tv/Enigma9011 every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can join the chat if you're a subscriber over there. We'd love to have you in on the conversation. If you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. You can go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, hashtag ad merch store. Get all of your swag over there, t-shirts, cups, backpacks, and more. Rep the brand, and we would love you for it. So yes, we're back for another podcast this week. As you can hear, Moose is on the side as always, filling in with his commentary and comments about whatever else is going on in the world. I don't know. We're flying solo. Only two topics today, because honestly, I'm not going to lie, had a tough time figuring out what I wanted to talk about today. But we're going to kick it over to some games that I've been playing recently that I kind of want to talk about. What my thoughts on were there, how they played out, thoughts on the story, etc., etc. I talked about it 2 weeks ago, some goals for this coming year of 2022, what I wanted to get accomplished, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but one of them was to play more games and not like, I don't want to do other things, but just like play them through and complete them, because I have a bad habit of starting a lot of games and then for some reason, whether it's just loss of interest or the next game comes along, it never really gets finished. It's kind of partially started, maybe even not even halfway through. So a goal for this year was to play through fully and complete more games, and I would like to say that I'm off to a good start. The holiday break, I guess you could say, definitely put it off into got us in the right step. We'll have to see. Obviously, it's still early in the year. We'll have to see if that continues, but it's nice to see some progress. So far, I finished 2 games. One I started month ago, and it's been kind of like a slow grind, and that was Deathloop, and I think I've talked about this previously on the podcast of how I've been enjoying that game. But I finally finished that one, and then another one that I had gotten over the holidays and kind of rushed through just because I was really enjoying it, and not rushed but blasted through, was Guardians of the Galaxy. So I kind of wanted to talk about these 2 games today, what my thoughts on them were, and how it played out. I'm going to give a general overview to start, so if you haven't played these games and don't want spoilers, this starting section will be spoiler free, and then I'll kind of go into some more details afterwards, but I'll give you guys a heads up so you can hop over to part 2 if you want to avoid that. But so as for Deathloop, Deathloop was a lot of fun. Like I said before, I think I've talked about it previously in the podcast, how the gameplay works out, and trying to find all the information about the different, what are they called? The 8 different visionaries on this island that you have to deal with and take out before you can leave. And that aspect of the gameplay and finding that information and kind of making a game plan was a lot of fun. I would say, how things played out with the gameplay, whether it's combat or just your mobility, really rewarding, really exciting to kind of go around, see what the different strategies are for these visionaries, how to tackle them, and then also picking up more and more information about either them personally or things that are just going on in the world. Everything was very rewarding and made you just want to keep digging farther and farther into the lore, into the story that they were providing. So I really enjoyed Deathloop. I thought it was a good time. As for Guardians, Guardians totally different in play style. Deathloop has 4 different sections that you can kind of openly explore and go through at different times of the day, whether it's morning, noon, afternoon, or evening, and different things will kind of happen, whether it's enemy layouts or certain people will be around or certain enemies, the visionaries themselves. And for Guardians, this is a more traditional point-to-point story-driven campaign where there is a little bit of exploration, in the pathing of the level, but definitely is more focused. And Guardians, I thought, was fantastic. I know, it's kind of hard sometimes to separate the actors from new voices or new people portraying them when it's a sequel or just a different version of a certain story that already exists. But I thought some of the voice cast took me right into it. Was believable. There was a few that had to win me over or maybe didn't sound super great in certain parts, but by the end of it, I was fully invested in every voice actor and actress's performance, and I really felt connected to the characters in what they were going through. And yeah, I don't know if it's just maybe what I've been playing recently over these past years, but a lot of games have been this more open world experience, which is nice in a way because you have that freedom to explore and go any which way you want to. But this felt really nice to get back to form, if that makes sense, of being that more point-to-point focused story, because it felt like more was getting accomplished, if that makes sense. And I think that's why I just kept going to this game to play it, and eventually blasted through it till the end. I think it took me maybe about a week and a half to play through it. And, that's, gradually a few hours each night. I don't remember off the top of my head what the total gameplay or game hours I put into. Luckily, the PS5, they've added that feature. I say luckily loose. Sometimes you look at play clocks and you're like, oh shit, I've played this game for triple digits in the hours. Yikes. But it's kind of nice to be like, oh, okay, it did take this long, or however it was. But I want to say it took maybe 12-ish overall, and it was a great time. And I didn't feel like I rushed either. There are some areas that you can kind of explore a little bit more, and I'll explain those in the spoiler section. But Guardians was fantastic. Gameplay was fun. The story they were trying to tell was a lot of fun, and I think it was rewarding for the extra stuff that they added throughout that I was not personally expecting or had not even spoiled on. So yeah, fantastic game for Guardians. So now, that's my overview. I'll go into spoilers. So if you don't want to know, peace out. Go to section 2 or topic 2. We'll start with Deathloop. So Deathloop, like I said, overall I thought was good. Something that I thought Deathloop kind of faltered on or fell apart on was the ending. I mentioned you have this build throughout the whole time you're playing as Colt and trying to figure out what's going on the island. Why is the loop happening? Why do all the visionaries want to stay in the loop? Why is Juliana trying to stop you from obviously breaking it? And you're learning more information about that, but then also running into your previous selves, or occasionally here and there. This Colt went through this stuff. This Colt went through this stuff. And all that's fantastic and makes you intrigued to play. When you finally do it, it's kind of simple to execute the plan. And maybe it was just because I knew exactly what steps to take, and I don't know, it didn't provide too much of a challenge, I felt, which wasn't a bad thing, but I felt like I was able to go point to point to point to point and be able to succeed. It took me 2 attempts to eliminate all the visionaries in the one go, in the one day, like you're supposed to. And the only reason that I failed the first time was because of a glitch or a bug. So at the end of each section, when you're ready to leave, you access a keypad terminal, you unlock a door, and you're able to go into a HUD or overlay menu and go to the next section. Well, I was trying to escape, and I had gotten into an altercation with an enemy at the same time, and I got stuck in there, but I couldn't access the door, and I couldn't leave the code to fight this person, so I ended up dying. So I failed. But other than that, yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was, you had your plan in play, which you got all the information for through the gameplay, which was satisfying and exciting. Figuring out how to line up all these targets so you could get them all during the day. So that was fun. That was satisfying. Get the plan, execute the plan. Great. So we eliminate the 7, and then we got to fly over to where Juliana is stationed. She's on the station that causes the loop or runs the loop, whatever. So you get over to her. You have a little discussion with her where she's trying to kind of tempt you to keep the loop going. She can show you stuff about the loop and how it works or why it works or what's the point, blah, blah, blah. And throughout the game, you can kind of see dialogue floating around the map of like past Colt's experiences, like, hey, be careful of this, or just side-eye comments like, this guy's an asshole, whatever it is. And while she's trying to tempt you, you see these conversation bubble comes up where it's like, she's lying to you, don't fall for it, execute the plan, blah, 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 whatever. And, so she does that, and then she offers you a pistol, and she has one as well. And you're pointing the pistol at her, she's pointing the pistol at you, and she says, okay, at 3, we're going to pull these, and that will reset the loop. And you're like, okay. So she counts down. I'm going to break this loop. I shoot at 3. She doesn't pull her trigger at 3. And Colt's like, well, what the hell? She didn't do it. He feels a little guilty. And then you get an option. You're technically a visionary, as you learn in this story, and kind of helped establish the loop. So you need to take your own life. Now, because everybody else is dead, this should break the loop. So you get an option. You either sit in the chair that was, where they had the conversation, and kind of wait for the loop to naturally repeat at the end of the day, because you didn't die, so the loop will not break because all the visionaries have not been eliminated. Or you can jump off the platform, killing yourself, making all the visionaries dead in that loop, resetting time and proceeding forward. So me, that's my objective. I run, jump off, kill myself. Okay, cool. Now, during your conversation with Juliana, she mentions that she wakes up every day prior to you waking up on the beach, where your loop begins. She says if she really wanted to, she could just be on the beach before, when you wake up, blast you, and make it all be done. Make it, finish it, end it. So I jump off, I kill myself, loop's broken. Great, mission accomplished. I wake up the next day. Time is different. It's like later in the afternoon. I can see the loop has been broken. As I wake up, Juliana is over top of me with her gun aimed at my head. Fuck. She says she is struggling with herself, gets frustrated, and walks away. Now, in the story, we learned that Juliana is our daughter, so I don't know if this is a familial, thing that's getting in her way of doing this, but she leaves. And Colt says, okay, so now where do we go from here? And the game ends. Right there. I get it. We broke the loop. All satisfying. Hey, hooray, we did the plan. But, I don't know if this is just a big setup for Deathloop 2, if that's even a plan. It just seemed very underwhelming of a finish, of an end. And it honestly took away from the game, because, everything else was great. Like I said, I loved finding all the information, discovering the different lore of the world, the visionaries, their plans, making the execution plan to get this to go all the way through. That was great. That was really cool. I enjoyed that process. But then when it got to the result, it just petered out and fell flat. And kind of sucked, to be honest. So now, finishing it, I can see why maybe this wasn't Game of the Year category for Game Awards specifically. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. It had so much going for it, and then just at the end, just whoop, okay, it's done. Does this discourage me from playing it again? No. Like, there's a lot of trophies, which I do plan on chasing after, that are kind of like complete a run doing this thing, or just complete a section of the day without getting spotted, or doing it this way. I'd like to try it. Some of them do seem challenging, like don't alert anybody but kill all the visionaries on the map and then leave. Like, what the fuck? Obviously, I'll have to look up some guides for that, but like, yeah, it's just the ending that was like, but other than that, fantastic. I like the powers you get. I like the guns you have, the gunplay. It's just, I don't know, that ending. Still would recommend it to people. I think it's just, I don't know. That ending just didn't deliver, I guess, after all this build, which is unfortunate. On the other side of things, Guardians fucking blew it out of the water. Did amazing. I know a lot of people, when this game was first announced, I think at E3, were like, what? This looks gross. Obviously, a lot of people had mixed reactions on Marvel's Avengers from Square Enix. So they're like, another game like this. Not the what's the terminology for it? Games of service, Jesus Christ, where they keep adding new stuff. It wasn't a game like that, but everybody had, the sour taste in their mouth from Avengers, so they didn't have a lot of faith in this one, even if it was a different developer. But yeah, it took everybody by surprise. So in this game, you're just Star-Lord, and then you kind of like, you run your team. You have each of the Guardians at your disposal: Gamora, Rocket, Groot, Drax, and you kind of tell them when to do certain moves. So that can either help you in the battlefield. So like Groot can trap enemies, Rocket can throw explosives, Drax can just go in there crazy with his knives, and Gamora with her sword. And playing around with the different Guardians and the cooldowns and the different abilities they have, a lot of fun. You kind of build up a little bit of a strategy of how you want to take out the enemies around you and deal with the situation there. As well as the combat, you can do it outside of combat. So how am I going to progress through this level? Maybe Groot needs to make a bridge for me, or raise a platform, or Rocket, because he's smaller, can fit into smaller places and deal with some electrical components that maybe Quill cannot, Star-Lord cannot. So that was cool. And then the whole dialogue, just the entire time of what they are dealing with each other. The team's still relatively new. I think Gamora has been the latest member that's added to the team. So some of the members with her history with Thanos, being the adopted daughter, are still kind of at odds with her, and the trust isn't fully there. But seeing their relationship grow from the beginning of the story to the end of the story is fantastic. Throughout the story as well, at certain points you can make some dialogue choices to either side with certain members of the crew, or either escalate a situation that they're talking about, or de-escalate it and kind of shut it down before it turns into anything. I'm not sure 100% how much those dialogue choices really affect your gameplay. There are a couple moments when you do make dialogue choices, similar to like, I don't think it's Skyrim, but maybe it is, where No, I'm sorry, it's not Skyrim. It's like a Life is Strange, like those types of very heavy dialogue option choices. It will pop up in the corner like so-and-so will remember this. There are moments in that like that in this game where so-and-so was affected by your choice here and respects you for it, or was a little perturbed or whatever. Luckily, I was able to make pretty good choices. But like, it was fun to see some of those choices pay off in later runs. So for example, there's a couple characters that I was not expecting to meet in this story. One being Mantis, one being Cosmo the space dog. Thanos is in it at one point as kind of a nightmare vision. Adam Warlock is in it. But for Cosmo specifically, there was a moment where I kind of had helped him break out of a mind control per se. And because I was able to help him later on when we were doing the final battle against the big bad army, he had come to lend his support and help us out in a situation. So I think like I said, I don't know 100%, but it seems like those dialogue choices will lead to certain things happening. And along with the dialogue choices, your discovering of certain things in the world, whether it's items or collectibles, that will also affect how the game goes. So throughout the levels, there are two different types, well, actually three different types of collectibles. There are outfits, so pretty much, customize how your Guardians look. There's costumes from the 2014 movie. There's costumes from different comic book runs. So you can collect those. That's one. Two is these things called lore markers, which is essentially just a text thing kind of talking about the world, that's something that had happened either directly there at that level or just an overlay similar to you could find in numerous games if you just kind of wanted to deep dive some stuff. And then the third one was physical objects in the world that kind of tied in to certain characters, and these would open up different dialogue as well with each of the Guardians. So for example, there was a voice like modulator or like a dialogue tool, and you could talk to Groot to try and figure out if you could have a conversation with him, obviously not understanding his language, of maybe furthering that connection. There was one that I found for Drax that was very important, that kind of gives you a bonding moment where he will open up about his family and his history. But if you don't find that item, you can totally miss that conversation entirely. I've heard from, shout out to the Trophy Room, a PlayStation podcast, go check them out. I've heard from them the couple times that they've talked about the game themselves of something that really hit them with Gamora, some kind of conversation that they had about her backstory. I totally missed that personally. I didn't find that item that had lined up with it. I'm looking forward to going back and trying to find it again, probably for trophies, but still finding these items and these collectibles to kind of have that dialogue option with them. And I thought that was cool. Just to kind of, once again, it gives you like that little bit extra on top of, the gameplay that they provide, to kind of feel connected in the world and get more out of it. And it's very rewarding. So I mentioned the different characters that we will eventually run into. Mantis, Cosmo, Thanos, Adam Warlock. Fun surprises of the characters, and they're all pretty important. I think Thanos is probably the least, just because it's like a illusion or a vision that you'll fight in one certain specific area of the level. But Mantis comes into play quite a bit, a few times in this story, and she's actually interesting. No offense to the MCU Mantis, but she's kind of spacey. This one is she's spacey in a different way. Like, this one's very comedic, and like she can see different timelines that happened or have happened or will happen. So she's like, oh, I'm not sure if this is the time you make it or not. And like she kind of plays with you in that way, in that kind of comedic role. And she was funny to have around along for the journey at certain points. Adam Warlock, which we haven't met in the MCU, we've teased at the end of Guardians 2. But his character is very like straight-laced, like to the point. I think he talks in weird patterns and stuff like that. But he kind of has a weird Thor, Star-Lord, and once again MCU like relationship where they're kind of like butting heads of like who's in charge, and that was a fun surprise. Totally didn't expect to see him in this story. But then, as well as the characters, I talked about the conversation with Drax. There's one area where it opens up a little bit more before you dive into the level, and you can kind of explore, and that's Nowhere. If you've watched the movies, Nowhere's this giant, like, robot head that a civilization has lived or decided to move into and mine out certain materials. But in Nowhere, there's all these different, like, bars and stores, and the collector is there with all of his collection. And I ran into one altercation with a character where I was able to kind of ease the situation there and get a ticket into the collector's emporium. So I was able to go explore there, and I was like, oh cool, this will be great. And inside the collector's spot is pretty much just like Easter egg central and just like a reward for people who have, gotten into the comics and, spent their time invested in there. So there was a lot of fun references. There was references about Thor and his frog form. There was something Doctor Strange related. There was something for Yondu in there. And that's another thing. Like, Yondu is name dropped so much. Unfortunately, he doesn't fly in for this story at any point. But yeah, it was just a fun, like I said, rewarding thing to see in the game that I didn't expect, in Nowhere to explore and go through that. But yeah, fantastic story overall, dealing with this totally new villain I had no idea about, and it becomes this big grand thing with just how the power works for them and how the mind manipulation works for them. One thing I will say, and this could have been just my personal experience, I did run into quite a few bugs. There was a few times where maybe I got stuck into something and had to do a reset, or just dialogue seemed to stop at certain points. So that was a little like, rough, but other than that, fantastic game. Highly recommend it for anybody who obviously is into the comics or the Marvel Universe as it is. But even if you're not, like, this game, man, hiccup central over here. Excuse me. This game was very rewarding. And like I said, maybe it's just the return to form of the straight point-to-point leveling. But it was nice to have this and not be like, all right, I got 50 markers on the map. Which one's the real, like, important one, or which one's I'm just going to get better gear or whatever. I don't know. This was nice. This was really nice to kind of get back into, and I'm looking forward to playing more games like that. Recently, I've dived into Kena Bridge of Spirits, which has a little bit more exploration, but seems to be point to point, and I've been enjoying that as well. So we'll have to see. I'll have to see, how the rest of Kena plays out. But anyways, Guardians, fantastic. Really hope they get a sequel out of this. Obviously, I think they will, because it performed very, very well. It doesn't lean or tease into anything specifically at the end. It's just more of like, team's all good, we've expanded a little bit, and we're all feeling great. It doesn't hint at anybody specific, so if that is the end, satisfying end, and then obviously if they go somewhere from here, it's open enough that they could do that. So great time. So yeah, just wanted to talk about those two games that I had finished recently. If you guys have played through them, love to hear your opinion on them, and then love to talk about games.